The wind played with the chimes hanging outside our quaint suburban home, its tinkling melody mixing with the laughter of Elsie as she played in the garden. Little toy fairies and trucks lay strewn about, remnants of her imaginative adventures. Mark leaned over to me, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "She's growing up so fast, Clara. Sometimes I just want to freeze time." I chuckled, squeezing his hand. "Me too, but every day with her is a blessing." Our peace was occasionally interrupted by Marianne, Mark's mother, always hovering, always doting. "Careful, Elsie, don't get your dress dirty," she'd chide, even if Elsie was nowhere near the mud. I exchanged a knowing glance with Mark. "Mom means well," he whispered, wrapping an arm around me. But things started to change. Elsie's laughter became less frequent, replaced by fatigue and bouts of pain. Days turned into a blur of doctor visits and sleepless nights. I remember the cold dread that settled in my heart as Dr. Mitchell looked at us, his usually jovial face solemn. "Clara, Mark," he began, "I'm afraid Elsie has a rare genetic disorder. It's going to require ongoing treatment, and it won't be cheap." Mark gripped my hand, his knuckles white. "What does this mean for Elsie?" Dr. Mitchell hesitated. "It's a tough road ahead. We'll do our best, but you need to be prepared both emotionally and financially." As the medical bills started piling up, Mark took on more work shifts, traveling often. The house, once filled with laughter, now echoed with silence and worry. That's when Marianne stepped in more prominently. "Clara," Marianne began one evening, her voice soft, "I know things have been hard. Let me help. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thank you, Marianne. It's a lot." She wrapped an arm around me, her touch surprisingly warm. "Your family. We'll get through this together." And so we leaned on Marianne. She'd attend medical appointments, whispering words of encouragement to Elsie and holding my hand through the toughest moments. One evening, as Elsie lay resting after another draining hospital visit, Marianne and I sat in the dimly lit living room, sipping tea. "You're strong, Clara," Marianne whispered, her eyes searching mine. "But remember, it's okay to break down sometimes." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I just want her to be okay, Marianne. I'd give anything." Marianne squeezed my hand. "She will be. We'll make sure of it." But as the days turned into weeks, a nagging feeling grew inside me. Marianne's involvement, once a comfort, began to feel overbearing. She seemed to have an opinion on every treatment, every doctor's suggestion. One day, after a particularly heated discussion about Elsie's treatment plan, Marianne snapped, "I've been through this before, Clara. I know what's best for her." Her words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. What did she mean by "been through this before"? Despite the tension, I couldn't deny the relief Marianne's financial help brought. The medical bills were astronomical, and with Mark away so often, I felt isolated. However, the balance of our relationship had shifted. Marianne had moved from a supportive figure to a dominant force in Elsie's care, making decisions without consulting me. One evening, as Elsie rested and Marianne busied herself in the kitchen, I found myself alone with my thoughts, the weight of our situation pressing down on me. The words "been through this before" echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Marianne's past than I knew. As the sun set and shadows danced on the walls, I made a silent vow to uncover the truth, not just for my sake, but for Elsie's. The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would do whatever it took to protect my daughter. The old Victorian home of Marianne stood tall amidst a row of contemporary houses, its Gothic spires and darkened windows a silent testament to a bygone era. Inside, it was a maze of rooms filled with antiques, memories, and secrets. One day, while Elsie napped and Marianne was out on an errand, I decided to look for some old family albums. I thought maybe if I showed Elsie pictures of a younger Marianne, it might lift her spirits. Ascending the creaky stairs, I reached the attic. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old books. Searching through stacked boxes, I came across one that seemed out of place. It was newer, with a lock. But what caught my attention was the name written on it, Sarah. Inside, there were photos of a young girl, no older than Elsie, with the same hazel eyes and curly brown hair. Interspersed with the photos were letters, their contents growing more desperate with each page. They spoke of a deteriorating health, a mother's anguish, and a search for a cure. A particular letter, dated just a few months before the death of this Sarah, mentioned experimental treatments. My heart raced. The resemblance between Elsie and this girl was undeniable. Could this be Marianne's child? Her daughter before Mark? Suddenly, the sound of the front door interrupted my thoughts. Marianne was back. I quickly replaced the box and descended, but the weight of my discovery bore down on me. That evening, after Elsie had gone to bed, I confronted Marianne. "Who's Sarah?" I demanded. Marianne paled, her eyes widening. "Where did you hear that name?" "The attic," I replied, my voice trembling. "Is she your daughter, Mark's sister?" For a moment there was silence. Then Marianne's voice, barely above a whisper, said, "Yes, Sarah was my firstborn. She had the same illness as Elsie." I felt a mix of sympathy and anger. "Why didn't you tell us?" Marianne looked away. "It was too painful. Sarah, she didn't make it. I couldn't bear to relive that pain." "But the treatments, Marianne," I pressed. "The letters mentioned experimental treatments. What were they?" Marianne hesitated, then with a deep breath she confessed. "When the doctors said there was no hope for Sarah, I became desperate. I turned to alternative treatments. Some weren't legal." My heart sank. "And Elsie? Have you been giving them to her too?" Marianne's eyes filled with tears. "I thought they could help. I couldn't stand by and watch another child of mine suffer." I felt a rush of anger. "You had no right, Marianne. How could you?" "I thought I was doing what was best," Marianne sobbed. "For Sarah, for Elsie." The room was thick with tension. The revelation of Marianne's secret past and her desperate actions weighed heavily between us. My trust in her was shattered, replaced by fear for Elsie's safety. "She's my daughter, Marianne," I whispered fiercely, "and I will do whatever it takes to protect her." As I left the room, I knew that our relationship would never be the same again. The secrets of the past had cast a shadow over our present, and I was determined to ensure Elsie's future was safe from the mistakes of yesteryears. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over our home. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but serene. I had called Marianne over, determined to have a final confrontation. She walked in, her eyes darting around nervously. "Why did you want to see me, Clara?" I took a deep breath, gathering my strength. "It's about the treatments, Marianne. I've spoken to the doctors. They say those treatments could be lethal." Marianne's face went pale. "I was only trying to help." "By endangering Elsie?" I snapped, my voice rising with anger. "You had no right." Tears welled up in Marianne's eyes. "I lost Sarah to this disease, Clara. I couldn't bear to lose Elsie too." "You should have trusted us, trusted me," I retorted. "She's my daughter, and I won't let you harm her." The room was thick with tension. Marianne looked defeated, her shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry, Clara. I thought I was doing the right thing." But before I could respond, a scream pierced the air. It was Elsie. We rushed to her room to find the window open and Elsie missing. Panic set in. "Marianne, what have you done?" "I didn't," she began, but I wasn't listening. I raced outside, shouting for Elsie. A neighbor pointed towards the park. "I saw her with an older woman heading that way." Heart pounding, I ran with Mark, who had just arrived home, and Marianne trailing behind. We reached the park to find Elsie with Marianne's sister, Lorraine, who was trying to coax her into a car. Seeing us, Lorraine panicked, pushing Elsie inside and speeding off. We gave chase, calling the police en route. It was a tense pursuit, but the police managed to corner Lorraine, rescuing Elsie. Back home, as Elsie clung to me, the police arrested both Marianne and Lorraine. The depth of their desperation and deceit was shocking. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The courtroom was packed as our family's secrets were laid bare. Marianne's lawyer argued her actions were driven by trauma over losing Sarah, but the evidence, especially the treatments and the kidnapping, was overwhelming. Throughout the trial, Mark was torn, grappling with his mother's betrayal and the revelation about Sarah. One evening, he broke down. "I can't believe Mom would do this, Clara. I feel like I never knew her." "We'll get through this," I whispered, holding him close. Marianne was sentenced to prison, while Lorraine was sent to a mental health facility. The community rallied around us, their support invaluable during those dark times. Inspired by our ordeal, I founded a foundation to support parents of children with rare diseases, ensuring they had access to reliable information and resources. Months later, our garden was filled with the sound of Elsie's laughter again. She was healthier, the proper treatments working wonders. Mark and I watched her, our bond stronger than ever. "We did it, Clara," he murmured. "We did," I replied, my heart swelling with love for my family. That evening, as Elsie slept, I began writing in a journal, chronicling our journey. One day I'd share it with Elsie, so she'd know the depths of a mother's love and the lengths we'd go to protect her. The last line read, "No matter the darkness, love and truth will always shine through." The story has come to an end, but here's a question for all of you. If you were in Clara's shoes, would you have given Marianne a second chance, considering her past trauma and intentions? Or do you believe her actions were unforgivable? Let's have a meaningful discussion in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more content like this. Your support means everything.